Lofi Poli Sci, how we doing out there? Michael Pickering right here, talking about our famous question, what's going on in the world today? And today, we're doing a survey, an analysis of Western U.S.-based media's coverage of international news. That's right, we're bringing back 100 Global News Stories episodes. Each month, once a month, we'll look at 10 different world news sites and see what their first 10 global news stories are. Add them all together and get 100 global news stories, a glimpse at what Western media are talking about in the world today. Now, what 10? Here we go. The Associated Press, aka AP News, the BBC, NPR, Reuters, Fox News, CNN News, Washington Post News, New York Times News, Google News, and Yahoo News. And yes, I know the last two aren't news creators, but they are news aggregators. And what we want to know in today's episode is what are people in the U.S. seeing in their news feeds? And these 10 platforms make up a lot of the news people in the U.S. consume. And in all 10 places, we're looking strictly at the world news sections. And we are using a computer, so we're seeing the web browser versions of these sites. And it's February 11th at 1:40 p.m. when we visit each of these sites at the exact same time. So here we go. What did we find when we looked at 100 different international news stories from 10 different news platforms? There were 28 different stories covered out of 100 different articles across our 10 platforms. Our top 5 most covered stories. Number 1. Earthquakes in Syria and Turkey, with 36 articles, meaning more than 1 in 3 articles out of the 100 were about the earthquakes. Number 2, the Russian-Ukrainian war, with 19 articles. Number 3, 5 articles about the U.S. shooting down high-flying objects and Chinese balloons. Number 4, a South African rapper being assassinated. We had 4 stories on that one. Number 5, rounding out our top 5, Iran's anniversary, with 4 stories. Our top 5 stories collectively make up 68% of all articles of the 100 stories. Our top 2 stories alone make up 55% of all the 100 articles. 55% of 100 was about 2 international stories. Now, at this point, you may be saying something about the international news cycle of Western media, and well, maybe something about a lack of international news coverage and diversity. I hear you. But really, if you're gonna make that claim, wouldn't you need more data? Like, something to compare these data to? I mean, wouldn't it be nice if we had done this a year ago exactly? Just to see how the Western international news cycle has changed, how it's evolved over the entire year? Spoiler alert, we surely did. We did a 100 Global News Story episode almost exactly 1 year ago on February 13th, 2022. So let's see how the international news coverage has changed and look at our top 5 from a year ago. And we did the exact same thing with the exact same websites and exact same news platforms that we did today. And of the 100 global news stories from a year ago in 2022, we had 34 different stories out of 100. 29 were about Ukraine and Russia, and this was before the war had started, mind you. This was a week and a half before Russia invaded Ukraine. All right, number 2 was COVID-19 stories. There were 24 stories about COVID-19. Number 3, we had 6 about the Olympics. Number 4, we had 6 about Afghanistan. And number 5, we had 4 about China. 69% of all 100 articles in 2022 on February 13th were only about 5 topics. And 53% were just about Ukraine or COVID. A year ago, 69% of all 100 articles were about 5 stories. Today, 68% of 100 articles were about 5 stories. A year ago, 53% of all 100 articles were about 2 stories. Today, 55% of all 100 articles were about 2 stories. The Russian-Ukrainian conflict has remained in the top 2 over the past year. So, what does this tell us about the diversity of news coverage today versus a year ago? That really it's about the same. There isn't much diversity in the 2022 data, and there isn't much diversity in the 2023 data. And the Russian Ukrainian conflict is still dominating headlines and Western news coverage in the international sections of these media platforms. The other stories are changing, true. And in fact, none of the 100 articles and stories today were about COVID-19. Now that's pretty significant. Now, next month, we'll do this again, and it'll be just over a year since Russia invaded Ukraine. And it just so happens we have a 100 Global News Story episode from a year ago at that time as well, to compare and see how the news cycle has changed over the past year since the Russian invasion has started. I wonder what we'll find. And that's a brief snapshot of what's going on in the world today. Right into the show, people. Connect to us on YouTube, Instagram, LinkedIn. Check out lofipolisci.com. And always remember that Lofi Poli Sci is more than just me. It's the we that we be. Talk to you tomorrow, Lofi listeners. Pickering, signing off.